Hey, Scott from MyGrowthRings.com here once again is in my sister's basement. And this video is going to cover the questions, comments, and cheap shots from the most recent video thumbnail on that set screw on the backside of the headstock that can release the quill spring. Um, Also, besides covering your questions, comments, and cheap shots, I have a couple more tips for you. So if this is something that you're going to have to do, I have some advice on how to make it a little easier than perhaps the way I showed it. Plus, we'll also show you how to put tension on your spring before you reinsert the quill. All right, a lot of things to cover. I think it's going to be a good one. Remember, this video is live for a week, then it goes into the Disney Vault and is visible to channel members only. Look at channel membership, why don't you? All right, so Dwight said, would not simply tightening the quill lock keep the spring from unwinding? The question about, okay, your quill lock is here on the front. Couldn't you advance the quill, take the quill out, and tighten the quill lock? Yes, you can, but you can do it only one time because you've then damaged your headstock. What you have inside the headstock are some, I am referred to them as lobes. I don't know what the correct term is, but you've got some little parts that will squeeze that quill. And as long as the quill is there, when you tighten that lock on the front, it can squeeze it. But if the quill isn't inserted into the headstock and you tighten it, it damages those lobes. It prevents it from ever grabbing the quill again without, I've got to get that logo in there. So critical. It'll damage the casting, and potentially when you go to straighten that out, because there is a method you can use to return that to its original shape, you can damage the headstock permanently. So you don't want to tighten that if the quill is out of the head. Sean, who, I tell you what, Sean has been a faithful commenter on these videos, usually with something very funny and snarky to say. So I'll encourage you to search for Sean's comments in the videos. Sean said, great information. Among other things, he said, seeing the bits and intricacies of the feed, it's intimidating and encourages thoroughly researching the steps before fiddling and diddling in there. Yeah. Also, we had Richard Daly, who is a channel member. Thank you, Richard. Said, terrifying. Chances of doing the procedure and getting it reassembled right approaches zero. I tell you, my advice would be is as you're taking the pieces and parts of this off, get yourself a screwdriver or maybe a hex wrench like this one and feed the parts onto it as they come off. So I know that this lock here, I don't want to ever tighten this, so I might as well go ahead and store it right here. And then next, underneath that, we have that wavy washer. I could put that right here. Next, we have the spacer that's in here. You know what? I have spring tension on right now. It's going to be difficult to get that off, but you get the idea. Just pull them off and store them like this, and that way you can feed them back on in the correct order. You can do this. I know that you can. Tom from Woodshop Nerdery, big fan. Tom, thank you for all that you do. Also, he happens to be a channel member, which is fantastic. He says that at 5 minutes and 7 seconds, you can see the markings that were left by the knurled cup set screw on the spring housing. According to the set screw document, that is the correct. That is correct, and in words, that is correct in that location. I wonder if the folks who've had slipping issues might have a different type of set screw in that location somehow. So he noticed as I pulled the spring barrel out of the headstock, you could see where that knurled set screw had been digging in. And perhaps for people that have that barrel rotating, maybe they had the wrong set screw in place. If it's a factory set screw, that's quite unlikely, but it could happen. But to that point, Jerry Wilson has a really, I think, maybe a valid idea here. Jerry says, years ago, I removed that set screw that you're talking about and replaced it with a slotted set screw. That way he can't loosen it with a hex wrench. Maybe there's something to it. I'm not a big fan of slotted set screws, but maybe we can get some other type of drive type, maybe like a security Allen that has the little pin in the center, or something that can keep us from accidentally loosening that. But you could also add some putty to it, as Shopsmith does, and just stop yourself from wanting to do that. I don't know. You do you on this one. So Terry says that you can't reach into the casting on the Power Pro headstock, and that the larger motor is in the way. Jerry's absolutely right. This is also an issue with very early Shopsmith Mark V's that don't have an access hole in the back of the headstock. Dan said he was having trouble with the quill retracting on his Power Pro headstock, and none other than Jim McCann from Shopsmith recorded a video for him, which I will link down in the video description, which I now call Shop Notes. And in fact, I interviewed Jim. Jim is head of engineering, and really that doesn't do his title credit. He's head of all things almost at Shopsmith. Been around forever. I interviewed him a while back, and it was a really fun interview. I'll link to that. You should check that out. Anyway, Jim recorded a quick video for Dan, which I will share, using a technique that's very similar to what I'm about to show you. But let me add to that Tigger56, not only channel member, but one of our chairmen of the board, said that he had the same issues with his Power Pro, and he recorded a video. By the way, his name is Mark. He recorded a couple videos, one showing how he was able to remove all of the guts without losing that big washer, and then how he reinstalled that without losing the washer. I'll show you my technique here, but I'll link to those videos as well. I think they're fantastic. Mark, thank you for sharing those. So we're going to loosen or remove the set screw on the top. Extend the quill till it stops advancing, pull it out. Again, we don't ever want to tighten this if the quill's not in place. We can remove the tension, but another technique, when there's tension here on the spring, we can take our depth gauge and rotate it all the way over to the 4 1/4 inch mark and lock it down. That is now going to hold that tension in place. At this point, it's possible to take all of these pieces and parts off and to remove this barrel. So now I've got the tension off. I could relocate that indicator if I wanted to. And I'm going to now pull this completely out. Let's remove that sleeve. And I'm going to catch the washers inside. There we go. So there is now tension here on this drum. That spring is coiled up inside, but because we have this locked in place, that's holding the tension on it. Now, the technique that Jim McCann was teaching was you can put this ring here and feed it in and underneath the lobes and not have that fall off. What I'm going to try here, and I'll be honest, I've not ever tried this before, is I'm going to take one of my rare earth magnets, and I'm going to use that to retain the ring. And let's see if I can do this. Now going underneath, going in low, and then raising it up. And now I'm on the far side of the headstock, and the rings are underneath, the washers are underneath the lobes. Did that work? It certainly did. Absolutely worked. So that's an easy technique. Take this, slide it back on. Washers. This back in place. Again, be sure I'm not tightening this yet because I don't have my quill in place. I have tension on my spring. I need to align the mark and tighten the set screw on top. And then let's feed the quill in. Once the quill is here, I could tighten this if I wanted to. It's under That's not a problem. And then let's engage. There we go. We have engaged the rack and pinion, and we can insert our set screw. Before I do that, somebody asked the question, what if the quill is out, tension is off, how much tension do you need to wind onto the spring? And the answer is 3 to 4 turns. So let's advance this. We're going around as if we're feeding the quill out. So I'm going to go 1 turn, 2 turns. Oh, this one's not even quite 3 turns. And that's all the tension we need to snap that back into the headstock. And then now we're going to reinsert the set screw into the top. And I'm kind of cheating. I'm holding the quill lever down with my arm. Slowly insert that while putting a little bit of a rock on it. Make sure that the set screw is going down in the hole. Set screw is now in that groove. I just back that off to the point that it snaps back in and isn't dragging, and that is the proper position for that. We need to put some wax on this. That's all there is to it. Mark B said, for some unknown reason, my quill feed lock mechanism no longer locks. It extends and comes back, but it just won't lock. Okay, so I think that it's one of 2 things. One is that big flat washer may be on the wrong side of those lobes in the headstock. I sure hope that's the case, because if not, those lobes are probably broken and missing. If somebody got super aggressive tightening the headstock, the quill lock, that could happen. It just doesn't, none of the locks on your Shopsmith require a lot of tension. You tighten anything on this machine, kind of hand tight. Let's say I'm going to tighten my headstock down. I turn this until I would have to apply some force, and then I go no more than a quarter turn beyond that. I go to tighten my quill. Oh, handle's way off here. Tighten my quill. Right now, to go any further, I'd have to apply some force. I'm going to go, and in that case, I would about a half turn. It doesn't require, though, really forcefully torquing that thing down. Nothing on this machine requires that. So Gary offered some words of wisdom. He says, resetting the quill spring is a rite of passage for Shopsmith owners, one which I'm embarrassed to admit I've had to do twice, and it's a major pain in the ass. There's a certain sense of accomplishment when you get it, though. Thanks again for making this fun. Thank you, channel members, for all your support, and I'll see you again real soon.